Joe's back. All right, everybody, we're going to get started. We're rolling. Welcome to our meeting tonight. We have our first on the agenda, our first item on the agenda is decision that unfortunately we don't have that ready for you, Jim. But we will have it as soon as and let's get right into our holdovers. So our holdovers, we had to renotice Lisa Canty at 443 Dune Road. Applicant requests variances from 197-8D for proposed addition with side yard setbacks of 6.8 and 6.9 feet, where the minimum required is 20 feet and with a result of combined side yard setback of 13.7, where the minimum required is 50 feet. And now who's Heather? Hi. Yes, up there, please. Thank you.
Board members, Heather Wright for the applicant, 48H Main Street, Westhampton Beach. So I know this has been on a couple times before the board.
Yes.
And I believe we, a
Couple times, huh?
I believe we resolved the survey issues and submitted a new survey with the requested information that the board required. So if it's okay with the board, since this is a renotice, I'd like to just jump right into the 5-part test and sort of go over why we believe this application satisfies the criteria for variance. So I want to start obviously with the character of the neighborhood. We are looking for side yard and total side yard relief, 6.8 on the west and 6.9 on the east. We're proposing to remove 341 feet of existing front decks and exterior steps in the front of the house, essentially enclosing that space to create additional living space for the applicant and their family. My clients are living in this house now full-time with 4 children, and they felt that the steps and the deck were just not safe year-round with the weather and in the wintertime. So this seemed to make a lot of sense in terms of gaining some additional living space and giving up some deck and stairs. So I know that there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple hearings, and I believe Mr. Walsh may be here, and you know, his client is very concerned that the proposed variances would cause a detrimental change to the character of the neighborhood. You know, I disagree with that. You know, this house has been in this location for over 20 years, since 2002. I would argue this house established the character of the neighborhood on very narrow lots like this one. Because after this house was built, there were other homes on very undersized lots with, you know, non-conforming lot width that were also granted variances by this board for lot width, for side yard and total side yard. And when you read those decisions, the board was very concerned about maintaining the character of the neighborhood and preserving the setback from the crest of the dune. So on a lot that is, you know, has a lot width like 40 feet like this one does, it's always been important to the board that you maintain that rear yard setback and you granted side yard and total side yard variances. So that's what we're doing here, and we understand that the variances that were granted in 2002 were substantial in terms of mathematically substantial. So we designed this so that we were keeping within that footprint. So we're not going any further. You know, we're keeping the addition within the footprint, and we're actually removing a portion of the back deck so that we do not exceed lot coverage. So we'll meet all the other dimensional regulations except for the side yard and the total side yard setback. I also understand that there was some discussion about whether the variance would impact the owner of 441 Dune Road, the light, you know, it would be too, you know, it would really negatively impact them. That argument to me just doesn't hold water, because we have a property that is separated by a 10-foot right-of-way. So there's the setback to the right-of-way, 10-foot right-of-way, and then I believe the neighbor's home is set back 17 feet. So we're talking 33 feet between the dwelling on our lot and the neighbor's lot, and we're not going any closer to their house. And the right-of-way is separated by a row of trees. So, you know, looking at that, we don't believe it negatively impacts the character of the neighborhood. And in terms of feasibility, we looked at a lot of different ways to do this, and so we thought the best way to do it would be to remove the existing deck and stairs and put the addition in place, in that place. So we're really only adding 79 square feet of additional, additional 79 square feet, I guess is. We're not exceeding our lot coverage here. And then in terms of substantiality, yeah, mathematically it is substantial, but we are meeting all the other dimensional regulations. We're going to be putting in a new septic system, so that's a mitigating factor. And so it's not going to be any more non-conforming than what it was for the last 20 years when you look at the house. So we believe that this meets the criteria for a 5-part test. I know there's been a lot of discussion about factors that are really not before this board, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Heather, do you have any information what was there before this house was built? Because the variance was granted in 2001 for this house to be built. I was on the board in 2001, and this actually decreased the nonconformity that was there before that. So there was a house that was actually more nonconforming than this one was.
Right, that's correct. And
Did you have that? I mean, that, as I did the research on this is what I came up with.
Yes, well, it pulled the house out of the dune. It made the house now meet the front yard setback. Again, the only thing.
I think it increased the side yard setbacks too, if I'm not mistaken. Not by much, because there wasn't much there to do.
Right,
but I
it's a
noted
very small lot.
that when, Mr. Klein?
The prior owner, my
Prior
client's
owner,
father.
right, when he did this, I mean, he tried to decrease the nonconformity as he built this house, if I remember correctly.
That's true, and that's the case with the other
So-
homes that also have a similar lot width. When the board granted the new construction on those homes, one of the reasons the board granted the setback relief similar to the setback relief that we have here was because they were removing structures that were significantly more non-conforming and.
Which was a big reason that he got this to begin with.
Correct.
The fact that there was something there that they were gonna make, improve it.
Right, and establish the character of the neighborhood as one where you are pulling the home away from the dune.
Which, as we all know, that's very important to us here to Westhampton Beach. So, I think we can move along. I don't have anything else for you right now. Did any board member have anything for Heather right now? Okay.
Just one thing.
Sure.
Tell me about the septic system. You say that's a benefit to what you're doing here.
Well, sure, so this house
I was on-
has an older septic system, obviously, since it was built in,
2001 when it did
2002. Now the requirement is to install the new IA system, and
Climate.
obviously, with any addition of a bedroom, it's going to require a new septic system, which is certainly better for the environment. I mean, the town has mandated the installation of these septic systems on all new construction.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Good. You all set? Questions, we're good for you right now, Heather, but
Okay.
don't go away. Do we have somebody, right?
Good evening, everyone, members of the board.
Good
I
evening.
am, you remember, I'm Kevin Walsh, the firm Walsh, Marcus, McDougal, and, Walsh, Marcus, McDougal, and DeBellis, 229 7th Street, Garden City, New York. I appear tonight on behalf of the objectants, who are the Sprotties. They are adjacent to the east. I appeared in the December meeting. I know we have a new survey. We discussed that at the December meeting. We are not at all believing that that survey is accurate. Last week, I asked if we could get our own survey at our expense of this property, because the surveys still don't line up. They may have this might be different than the prior survey, but it still does not line up. And first and foremost, the survey in the front of this says 40 feet. The deed to the property, which these owners have, is 39.6 feet. This was a subdivision of 2 lots, the Maroonies to the west is 39.6 feet, this is 39.6 feet. So the measurements starting at 40 feet are skewed, they're not correct. So I would ask the surveyor, I don't know if the surveyor did his actual measurements or her actual measurements. I don't know if the surveyor's here to ask that. But I think first and foremost, this board would want to get good measurements so they know that when they decide to give a variance or not give one, they're doing so with accurate information. So I renew that request. We're not looking to delay this thing. And we did contact a surveyor who would do it. It would be at our client's expense. And then this board would at least know whether or not the survey, what the difference is or possibly differences in the survey. And if that survey comes back and supports the data you have now, then we're on to just the issue of whether or not you think they should be given a variance. So that request is made for this. I know this board can't make the applicant, but the board can consider that the applicant maybe wants to do that in the context of this. So far, it has been rejected. As to the variance itself, I don't believe the applicant makes the test for an area variance here. And I'd like to submit, I know I submitted documents in the last record. I'd like to submit some more documents into this record tonight, because in reading some of the decisions of this board, I noted that board members have actually complimented attorneys who have given them precedent that's in the area, precedent that they can look at, and then they can help them make a decision here. So if, Mr. Chairman, no objection, I would introduce, I last introduced an exhibit, my new objectance, my next objectance exhibit would be Exhibit G. And this is a copy of the decision of this board on the Maroney application, which is the house that was directly to the west of this house. The one I referenced at 39.6 feet frontage, like I believe this one has. I'd like to provide a copy of that decision, if I might.
Sure.
I forget, do you need to mark the document? I do. Well, I might have run out. I might have.
I have it here.
Okay, thank you. That is the decision that this board rendered on the Maroney case, which was in 2016 or 2017. I also have a letter, an exhibit objectance H, which is a letter from the adjacent neighbor to the west, Hofer, when that application was before this board. And I'll just cite you to two components of this. In the letter of Mr. Hofer, he was objecting to the Maroney's variance because they were imposing an enormous house directly outside of his property or directly against his property.
Thank you, Megan.
In the Maroney case, this board required the Maroneys to amend their plans and submit a variance that reduced the side yard, that increased the side yard setback. So Maroney's first application was for a 9.5 and a 6.3, 9.5 and a 6.3 foot variance on the two sides for a total of 15.8. The board required them to go 9, 8.5, and 9.5, requiring them to maintain 18 feet. The Maroney case is decided a few years ago. A neighbor objected, the Maroneys cooperated, the board insisted that that be the setbacks. So that seems like that sets a standard in the immediate area for these narrow lots. So I'm hoping that you take a look at that case and that we talked about precedent.
I have it.
Yeah, okay. We talk about precedent, that does not support precedent for granting the request here. That supports an idea that this board has a practice of limiting.
Is this the same width?
that.
Maroney is the
It
same
is.
width? as
It
the
is at the front, actually. Again, Maroney's is clearly 39.6.
So what are you actually asking us to do with this? Are you asking us to tell them to cut the side of their house?
No, I'm asking them, we're asking them to not go any further with it. The
I don't think
request.
they are.
Well, they are because they're extending the intrusion into the side yard. And they are, because their lot narrows as it gets closer to the front, it actually diminishes the setback to my client's property. So it reduces the setback, which is why they need the variance, which is why they need it if they weren't changing it.
Well, they would need it either way.
Yeah,
Oh,
well-
but I guess, I'm thinking maybe what John was trying to say is when we cut through all of this, what exactly is your objection?
Well,
What ultimately would you want?
What's the actual thing that you want?
the board to deny the variance applications. There hasn't, in our opinion, there hasn't been a showing that they need it, that they want it, everybody
Mhm.
wants. I think, Mr. Chairman, you said that last time, the rationale for why people do what they do and what they want, we don't get into that. We just look at it and we determine whether or not they should get it. In this particular case, the board, they have a large house there. The board could just deny it and say, build with what you have. The precedent that we're setting here, if Mulrooney comes in again, why would Mulrooney not be able to extend their setbacks and build more? Having the board had determined that they couldn't in 2016, would the board be saying, well, if these owners, this applicant now has setbacks which are much less than yours, we're gonna grant you the ability to build a bigger house? This is on the immediate area, this
Okay.
house has the smallest setbacks of any of the houses that you've given variances to.
Okay, so now, you want to do another survey.
Well,
So tell me what that is going to accomplish.
I think that.
We want to be clear on what that's going to
No.
accomplish.
Mr. Chairman, the last change in the last survey produced a variance that was greater and more impactful on my client than was in their original application. So,
Right, so why would you want to do another one?
because I think it would even be great, I think the level of the variance that would be needed would be even greater, to the extent that that is needed here. And I also believe that we should all have accurate data when we consider these things.
And now, these surveys are done by professional licensed surveyors. So if we get another survey in here, are we gonna have a match between the two guys,
Well,
trying to
it-
decide who's right?
Yeah, it is always a danger,
It
Mr.
seems like this survey that was done was pretty, I mean, just reading it, not being a surveyor or an engineer myself, it seems like they did a pretty good job.
Well,
And if you want to have that done, is he here, or you have a surveyor here to tell us why?
no,
No.
he hasn't been authorized to do the survey. He doesn't know necessarily what the data will find. And when you say that survey was done right, the survey of that, the same surveyor who produced this survey you're looking at now did a survey a month ago. And he had 100 feet to the crest of the dune. And the note was based on discussions with building inspector.
Right.
That doesn't seem to me to have been very accurate. Now, he has amended that, but that suggests to me that the survey's being done may not be in the field, being very careful with how they're measuring things. So that's all. Again, it may confirm what you have in front of you. But if it doesn't, it would seem to me, if I were on the board, I'd want to know that we have a problem here, or that this survey maybe is a problem. I would also put into the record another decision, and I say, I've read the decisions of this board, and they have thanked Mr. Humes before for submitting information on related cases. This case is the Hoffer case, which is just to the west of Mulrooney. This case, in addition to this would be objections I. In this case, the board also reduced the request of the Hoffers with the initial request they came in with. The side yards were reduced down, and both side yards greatly are larger than what we have in this application before you even consider granting this. So what you're looking at right now, the applicant's home, as it relates to side yards, has less side yards than any of the adjacent houses. Other people came in with applications. This board, in its discretion and wisdom, said, you have to shrink yours down and provide 9 feet to Mulrooney. Hoffer had to provide 9 feet on his application, which is before you. And this owner doesn't even come close to the 9 feet, and now you're willing to consider giving him a variance for even less. It doesn't.
Well, we're here listening to testimony, okay? The applicant made an application to it.
Yes.
You know, you're making the assumption that
I
we're
did say
lost.
consider, Mr. Chairman, I said consider giving him less.
Well, we have to consider every application.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I also will add that in this village, I know we're discussing less than feet in times, we're percentages of foot, but your dimensions on all these variances, the cases that I've seen in this area, they're not just feet, they're 2 point something, so they're all degrees of feet. So the differences may seem to some people looking at this to be not significant, but when you live next door, it is significant. So I would submit, and I think it's just about to my last exhibit, which would be objections 8, which is a photograph, from my client's window. Yeah, so my client's window looking out, that is looking west, and that is looking at the existing home that's there now. So if this house comes out 8 feet or 10 feet more, which is what is before this board, their entire view that they had will be gone. So there's a meaningful impact on my clients, and the board should consider that in the context. And I told you at the last hearing, and I was told that it wasn't that relevant, this applicant has already using the home and marketing it as a 4-bedroom. I think in their application they were looking for another bedroom. They already have 4 bedrooms here based upon the information I submitted at the last hearing, which is in an exhibit. So lastly, on the test, if I might conclude on that. As I indicated, I think the applicant, in getting the decision years ago, which, Mr. Chairman, was an error, that in the decision of that case, prior to this case for this applicant, the board thought it was looking at a property in the D5, in the residential 5 district, which has more lax setbacks. It granted the variance. You can't go back. You ask, what are we looking for? You can't go back, and that was, I think it was an error, because the board, in their decision, said what the property required setbacks were, but it was an error, I believe. But no one wants to go back. It's just that I just think this would be, we think, compounding the error by extending this and giving more of a variance. On the test, conformity to the surrounding area, to me, is clearly what exists now and what the Maroonies have gotten, what the Hoffers have gotten. My client, I think council mentioned it, her setback was required to be 17 feet against this property. So they were required to put 17 feet between the properties, and he is already at much less than that and is asking to go even less than that. So I think the conformity of the area would support a denial on this decision. I think is it substantial? On a strict percentage basis, the difference on the side yard setback from what exists right now to my client and what is proposed is about a 15% variance. If you consider it as the law requires us to do against what the code allows, it's about a 66% variance from what's allowed. Now, I know the board has had to use discretion in granting some relief on side yards in this district, but it is a substantial, no matter how you slice it, it's a substantial setback variance. And the overall variance is about, when what's required in the code is over 70%. It is self-created because it's not like they don't have an existing home that is substantial. They have a home right now that's larger than the Maroonies, who is one of the last variances you granted on a similar size lot. So it's not that they need something that they don't have, they just want more, is our position. As I said, it is self-created. So we're hoping that we would pay for a survey just so we have a clear understanding, and surveys can cut both ways. It could provide information that would allow you to say, Mr. Walsh, you were wrong. They have more room. The setbacks are actually better, but at least you'd be operating with a shot at better information. And other than that, we're just asking that you consider denying this variance and not giving any further relief. Thank you.
Thank you. please.
So I just want to go over a couple things. First of all, those decisions were decisions that I included in the documentation that I submitted to this board. Because I do think it's important for the board to have all the facts in front of them and truly look at the character of the neighborhood. In the Maroney decision and the Hoffer decision, I think they're distinguishable, and they're distinguishable because both of those decisions involved new construction. So the applicant came with a clean slate and had a proposal which, after hearings with the board and hearing the board's comments, scaled back their requested variances and in order to get the decision by the board. I think that's a little different than our situation here, which is one where we have an existing dwelling. Like you said, we can't really cut off part of the house. And so I think it's also important to note that with the existing dwelling, we were mindful of the setbacks that we have now, and that's why we're removing a substantial front deck and steps and using that space as the living space. Of course, we'd love to keep the deck, right? We'd love to have the deck, but we realize that that's not feasible. So as an alternative, we're enclosing that area, and we're talking about 79 square feet, basically as an addition to the home, which is relatively small. And I think it's a misstatement to say that the variance to 441 King Road is now going to be greater than what's there, because it's actually not the case. What was granted in 2002 was 6 feet to the property line. The house was, I believe, built actually to what we're asking for now, which was the 6.9 feet. So we're not getting any closer to the neighbor's house on that side of the property. I also think a distinguishing factor is the fact that there is a 10-foot right-of-way between the two properties, which creates a buffer, which, if it didn't exist, maybe the board would look at it a little differently, but it does create an additional 10 feet that separates the home.
Can I ask you a question? Who owns the West Walk, that right away?
It's public.
It's part of the original Winter Business subdivision. There's several.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily answer who owns it. I'm just curious if you know, was it ever dedicated to the village? Is it owned?
I would have to dig into that because I don't know the answer. I just know it's public.
Who said that?
Is the village?
It's listed on our GIS as the village, but I've never seen the title.
And I also want to point out that, yes, while the neighbor's setback, the setback that they were granted was 17 feet, I think we gotta acknowledge the fact that their lot is 102 feet wide. So it's a little bit different than a 40-foot wide lot that we're dealing with here. Again, I just want to reiterate for the board, we're making use of the space that we have in order to gain additional living space. We're getting rid of outdoor space, and we're only adding 79 square feet.
Thank
Anything
you,
else?
Heather. Tony, you have anything else? So Mr. Walsh wants to do another survey. You have a
I hear
problem?
that.
Huh?
Again, I think we got a new survey.
I know we got a
had an
survey,
original, we
Mr.
got a
Walsh
new
wants to have a survey.
Now we're gonna get another
Can
survey.
I interject on this? Do you want to do another, do you want to let them do another survey or not?
I don't think it's
Then
necessary.
that's the end of the discussion, because we as a board have zero power to say to them, you should allow somebody else on your property to do a survey, so.
But I would like to put one more thing, though, in the record, which is when I sent Mr. Walsh a copy of that new survey 2 weeks ago, I did invite him to contact our surveyor to address any questions he might have. I don't know if that was ever done, but that was an option. So if there was any sort of questions regarding that survey, they could have been answered at that time.
Look, we have to rely on surveys unless there's a patent problem, which we had. The first version of the survey, we all looked at it and said, there's something not right here, and asked them to go and take a look at it, and they came back and gave us a new survey. you know, and then the last version, there was a question about the dune crest. We asked them to fix that, and they did. I don't see anything on this, I mean, the only thing that was raised had to do with the frontage. If they had a surveyor, they can take a look at the frontage without going on the applicant's property if there really were an error. So I think as a board, you have to rely on this piece of paper unless there's some testimony out there that would support that it's not a valid survey. So that's my position. I don't think we can go beyond that at this point.
Mr. Walsh?
Chairman,
I should-
thank you, and I will not belabor this, and I know you don't like back and forth, but the 79 feet, and I think council's right. If the applicant will won't allow us to do a survey, then we can't do a survey. The 79 feet is a misnomer, because that's a lot coverage issue. So I have a difficult time with the survey, because I'm trying to determine whether or not they really need a lot coverage variance. I could come in here tonight and say, based on a day of looking at the dimensions and scrolling them with a ruler, and I think that they are over the 20%. How much, I can't tell. Because they don't have dimensions on this survey for the addition. That addition in the front, it's missing the length of it. So I really don't know. I had to try and extract it from a measurement from another calculation on the survey. So I question whether it's even 79 square feet. On their building permit application, it says 2,600 square foot home. We want to increase it by 1,000 square feet. So that, of course, is 2 floors. But are we to believe that only 79 square feet is the lower level? And if you, on the first floor, and that would affect lot coverage? And if you look at their survey and you see what they're removing and what they're adding, eyeballing it, looks like they're removing quite a bit less than they're adding. And that's, again, a surveyor going on, being able to check that would actually do the dimensions of each room. So I am not testifying that they're above the square footage, but I believe that they are from my looking and my effort to look at that survey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Brad,
Mr.
you
Walsh,
have
on this survey that they
Coming up.
presented here, it does show 20%
Yeah.
lot coverage.
But he, and I don't know the surveyor, but it is, the surveyor, he doesn't tell you the dimension of that front room. So the area on the survey along West Wall that says 6.4 feet west, what's the dimension of that room? I have no idea. And that would impact lot coverage. So you're relying on him not to have shown you a dimension, but yet he's telling you exactly how much square footage is being added, and how much is being taken away.
But there's no coverage variance that's been flagged for review by this board. So what your question has to do with him. He flags the variances that this board determines. And the building inspector has not flagged the coverage variance, has not considered any problem. So this board doesn't have, you're making arguments about a coverage issue that this board has no jurisdiction over
Well,
right now.
I'm arguing that there might be a coverage issue.
Yeah, but that's not for this board.
Well,
No,
if
it's
the
not.
board-
It's not for this board because this board only has jurisdiction over variances that the building inspector has flagged
yeah.
and advertised. You may have an appeal issue if you wanna take some issue with a determination of the building inspector not to flag it. That's up to you, but you could appeal it. That doesn't mean that it's before this board on this application,
Yeah,
because he has not flagged that,
If
so.
the board approves the application based on this site plan and survey, it will be an error because the dimensions are not there. I can't speak for why the building inspector has not requested dimensions for each of the rooms. I know in the last survey, there was obvious problems with that survey, yet it found its way to the board for a review for a decision. So I think that there's not enough look at that lot coverage issue. Again, I can't make this board look at it. I can only say that I think if you're gonna grant a decision for variances, you should know exactly, and you should ask the building inspector, did you do an analysis? And how could he have done it when you don't have the dimensions of the room?
But that's not, this board
Yes,
isn't out
yes.
there fishing for other variances, and we've taken we followed the rule. There's a case called Capitola v. Town of Riverhead, very solid in terms of saying the board has jurisdiction over those variances that the building inspector has determined are needed. The board doesn't have to consider variances that haven't been flagged by the building inspector. It's not this board's job to go out and say, maybe there are other variances that you didn't consider. It's his determination that sets in motion the jurisdiction of this
Oh,
board,
okay,
not
so
the other way around.
Then I could only ask that this board ask the building superintendent at some point, not here, have you done an analysis of the zoning criteria here to determine that a lot coverage variance is not needed? That's the best I can ask them. And thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Hi, my name's Jackie Sprati. I live at 441 Dune Road. I came to the November meeting because as an application, you sent to the neighbors, if you have a problem, please come and share your concerns. In November, I came here, and I knew right away that the survey was off. And I brought that concern to you, and at first you told me, I have a sealed survey, this is right. You gave me the opportunity to prove that the survey was wrong. His second survey that came in was also wrong. Different surveyor, but wrong. He gave himself 100 feet from the crest of the dune, which gave him a bigger house on a piece of property that's 39.6. Okay, so then we're like, okay, that's wrong. Because I know we all are 75 feet from the crest of the dune. You've made that known from day one for every piece of property that came before you. Now he comes in with Survey 3, which is made by Survey 2. And now he's 78 from the crest of the dune. He gives himself another 200 square feet of his property out of the blue. My husband went to David Fox, and David said his survey's wrong. He did call his surveyor. He spoke to his surveyor. There was a big miscommunication between the both of them. That is why we asked that the board grant us the permission. If you cannot grant us, I think I did see a decision where the board made the homeowner get a surveyor of your choice, just so that we can know, because I know he's closer than what he's saying. His house is on an angle. In 2021, you received a letter from some committee, an advisory committee, that said his house in 2001 was too big for the property. So here we are, 2023, now he wants to make it bigger. I don't understand it. I honestly don't understand it. I come before you because I'm asking you to look at all the evidence. There are missing pieces. And for Brad, the deck that he's saying that he's taking off the back, that was his walkway that's not included in square footage. His steps in the front of the house, that's not included in square footage. So all these numbers are coming out of anyone. I'm asking you to take the time, please. Let's get this right. I have to live next door to a monstrosity. If he gets to build, he is 77.9. My house is, with the deck, 59 square long. How is 77.9 against me, even though I do have the 10-foot right of way? You are absolutely right. But the numbers are off. His house is diagonal. It will be a monstrosity for the neighborhood. And I'm just asking you to consider everything and to let's get this right. This is very important to me. The dune crest is very important to me. I called Brad when he was flattening the dune. Brad came to the house. His fence is on the dune. It's illegal. I don't even know why that's not even brought up here. That fence should be taken. No one on Dune Road has a fence that's
Okay,
75 feet from the
easy,
crest of the dune.
Easy now.
No, I know. I'm
I know,
I'm
you're
very
emotional,
passionate
you're
about
very
this.
passionate about it, we appreciate that, but again, you're getting into issues that are not before us. Okay, a fence in the dune, if that's a violation, that's not before this board. This board has an application, and that's what we're going on. Okay.
I was under the impression that if there's violations, that you're not supposed to hear this case.
Is there a violation on file that we know of? I don't think so, not that
Well,
we're aware of.
there might be, but what's before us is an addition to the front. That's what
Right.
we're working with. We're not, the violations don't come to the zoning board. And there are many, many properties that may have violations that shouldn't preclude them from being before this board.
But is it your law that if there are violations, that they're not supposed to hear it? That they're supposed to be rectified?
I don't think so.
It'll get addressed at the time of CO. I mean, if they get a building
It'll
permit.
get addressed
they
with
do
the building
work,
permit.
They're gonna have to come back for a CO at some point.
Right, he doesn't have
If there
COs.
are violations that Brad notes at that point in time, they'll have to deal with them.
Not everything is cured by this board. There are things that I may have to permit with interior work or the deck work and these other things we talked about.
But you didn't notice that on the survey, he took away square footage that he wasn't even entitled to?
No, I did notice it, yes. But I'll talk to the board if they have a question about that.
So did anyone have a question?
We've had lots of questions about this application.
Good. I'm just asking
This
for,
is not something we take lightly.
no, I know, I've been before
Okay.
you about 5 times, so I
So,
definitely know.
you've been for
And
your
I appreciate-
application, you've been for other applications as a neighbor, and we respect that. And we do take every application very seriously.
Okay, and that's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think we have enough, guys. What do you think? Does anybody else have anything on this application? Because from a zoning aspect, I'd like to go ahead and close this hearing for decision. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. We have all in favor? Okay. Thank you all. We certainly have our homework. Okay, that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you all for coming. All right, what do we have to here? We have a renotice for 14 Stillwaters Lane, Frank Calamati and Rosemary Vanacord Revocable Trust. Applicant requests, what's that? Applicant requests variance from 197-6D for proposed portico with a front yard setback of 45 feet with a minimum required is 50 feet. Did you catch your breath? Huh? Did you catch your breath there? Okay, good.
Okay,
Heather, we had to renotice this, right, because of the,
yeah, because of the error.
right.
But this one should be quick. So Heather Wright for the applicant, 48H Main Street, Westhampton Beach, the Frank Calamari and Rosemary Vanacore Revocable Trust at 14 Stillwater Lane. The premises is in the R1 zoning district, which requires a minimum lot area of not less than 40,000 square feet and a lot width of 150 feet. We have currently improved with a one-story single-family dwelling and pool. All we're looking to do here is cover the existing entryway porch. So the right now the porch is just it's open and it's 46.5 feet when 50 feet is required from the front lot line, and by putting a cover over it, we are required to seek a variance from this board. I think it's very straightforward. It's not going to impact the character of the neighborhood. It's not substantial. There's no negative environmental impact. Essentially, my clients just want to be able to, when they come into the house or when they get packages, keep them sheltered from the rain, or if they're looking for their keys to get in the house, not get.
They could use umbrellas or a hat.
They could, but.
I think, I don't have any questions on this. We
I don't
went through
either.
this last month and just had to re-advertise it. Okay, so, thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna make a motion to close this hearing for decision. Second by John, all in favor? Okay. Okay, number 4, Daniela Kahan, 121 Seafield Point. Applicant requests variances from 197-6D for a proposed front yard setback roofed over entry of 45.2 feet, where the minimum required is 50 feet. Also 197-6 for a proposed addition with a side yard setback of 26.7 feet, where the minimum required is 30 feet. From 197-29-1A for a proposed addition within the required rear yard setback 28.4 proposed 50-foot required, representing a prohibited increase in degree of nonconformity of a dwelling with pre-existing nonconforming rear yard setback from 197/35C1 for a residential storage shed erected 4.8 feet from the property line, where the minimum required is 10 feet. And lastly, from 197/43A8 for a driveway gate installed with a setback of 14 feet, where the minimum required is 20 feet. Is there anybody here for this application? Bada bing, bada boom? No? Okay, then we're gonna hold it over, I guess. Hopefully the applicant will show up and present his case. I'll make a motion, we hold this over for all purposes.
Second.
Second by Dan, all in favor?
Aye.
That's a lot of reading for someone not to be here.
We were waiting for them to update the survey. What are concerns the driveway gate wasn't showing us? They haven't submitted anything since.
Okay, we're up to our new applications. Number 5 is Michael Cohen, 18 Hazelwood Lane. Actually, that's Hazelwood Avenue. Applicant requests variances for 197.9C for proposed building area lot coverage of 32.7%, where maximum is 20%. It is permitted 197.9D for a proposed combined side yard of 35.3, where the minimum required is 40 feet. 197.29.1 for a proposed conversion of a cabana into an accessory apartment with a non-conforming setback of 8.1 feet, where 15 feet is required, representing a prohibited increase in degree of nonconformity of a pre-existing nonconforming structure. And from 197.35C to legalize a residential storage shed erected in the side yard with a setback of 1 foot, where required to be located in the rear yard and with a setback of 10 feet. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Anthony Portillo. I'm the architect.
Anthony, before we go any further, I
Yes,
want to
sir.
get it on record that I am the neighbor directly across the street from this applicant. I want to make sure that there's no problem with you or anybody else with me being on this board to hear this case.
Oh, and for the record, we know each other as well. We're neighbors as well.
Right. So, just want to get that out there, so,
Sure.
okay.
Thank you.
So,
So there's a couple things going on here. Maybe I'll start with one and then I'll work my way around. The simplest one is the tool shed, I think. That's, I think that, that could be our, bargaining chip maybe if the board would like us to move it or.
pardon, I like that. You're very good, Anthony.
The board would like us to move it. I think
Uh-huh.
that they would. I don't believe they erected it. I think they bought it and the tool shed was there from my knowledge and conversation with the owners. So if we can keep it there, they'd like to. If we are asked to move it, I think they're willing to move it.
That's just like a plastic shed too, right? It's
That's
not-
correct. It's nothing,
Okay.
that's bolted down to any type of slab or anything like that.
So when we looked at the plans that you submitted, right now we have roughly about 22-23% lot coverage?
Oh, currently, yes, we're a little bit, we're basically about 22.6, I believe. And our request is for 32.7. And talking about lot coverage, big reason for that is the existing tennis court that's creating that lot coverage issue.
Right, now that tennis court has created a big problem for you with lot coverage here,
That's right,
okay?
that's right.
So,
One of the plans here too is that there is currently a cesspool in the rear yard. We are gonna be moving and putting in a new IA system in the front yard. So we are upgrading the septic system for 2 reasons, is where we're putting the pool, and because we're adding a bedroom in our plan for the addition to the main house. So we are gonna be upgrading the septic for that reason, so I think environmentally, that's a kind thing to do. We'll reduce our nitrates, that we're gonna be, or they'll be producing from living there. The pool, I think, we really thought about it. We didn't go to like the 20 by 40 pool. I talked to them, I said, hey, we really gotta get this down because we are at lot coverage issues. So, we kinda settled at that 16 by 36 size, with a small hot tub next to it. It's an 8 by 8 hot tub. you know, obviously we could have went larger and requested more, but I just wanted it to make sense to the board and sort of make sense to the layout and the way that the lot's already sort of situated with the tennis court and the house. There's already an existing deck there. We're basically proposing to put back a deck that's about the same size. It's actually a little bit smaller, so the deck, we are sort of reducing a little bit from what's existing on the current house. The existing accessory building that's currently there, in my opinion, our addition is not adding any encroachment on the side yard. It's an existing side yard encroachment that we're requesting that 8.1 feet. So the building, that portion of the building's already there. So the addition is not encroaching on the side yard.
You talked about the cabana?
That's correct, that we're asking to turn into a accessory building, a one-family accessory building. The owners, their parents live that they're gonna be living there and utilizing it. So it is immediate family. They have a small child. The family sort of shares responsibilities with babysitting, et cetera. And they're mainly gonna be, that's who's using that accessory building. And then we're proposing the addition on the main house. I think architecturally it really balances what's going on with the house personally. It's an older house, kind of heavy on the top and then sort of low on the left-hand side. So on the right-hand side, we're proposing this addition to kind of level it out. Also, it's giving them a 2-car garage. They currently do not have a garage, so we're attaching a 2-car garage. On the main level, we'll be adding in a mudroom, half bathroom, and then above that, we'll be putting in a primary suite. So it'll be a main bedroom with main bathroom.
That's
So
all gonna be attached to the main house?
that's correct. We're attaching it to the main house.
So you're gonna put that master suite pretty much above the garage?
That's correct. The garage will be fireproofed as required by building code.
Say that again?
It'll be fireproofed as provided, as
Wow.
required by building code. But yeah, that's the plan. We talked about a detached garage, just want the board to understand that. We talked about it, you know, because we could have been a little closer to the side yards, the accessory building. It just kind of made sense on the property. You know, the current layout of the house is sort of elongated, so, you know, pushing it back and where that accessory building is now and the tennis court, kind of made sense that the house just was elongated with the property. So
So the
that's,
problem we have with this is your lot coverage.
yes,
Lot coverage is, I mean, it's like 40-some-odd% increase in lot coverage, where we're gonna have other cases come before us on Hazelwood. So this is, is there any way you can decrease your lot coverage?
I think.
You have a pre-existing tennis court.
Yes. Would it be a discussion with the owners, obviously? I don't think I think they love their tennis court, they utilize it. I don't think they wanna get rid of it or
Never knew anybody wants to
shrink
get
it.
rid of their tennis court.
I did do a little research and I could hand this into the board.
Good.
And I found a few properties. I couldn't exactly find their lot coverage, but it's pretty obvious that they're way over lot coverage. And then what I looked at was
In the
homes.
R4 district?
These are, I believe, R4 district. I would have to check on that, so maybe I could give you that information. I could submit that.
He has lot coverage maximum 25, it's not.
No, it's 20.
It's 20.
It's 20, because in the R4 district, they don't go up to 25% with the tennis court.
I think that was actually corrected in the denial letter too. The denial letter does say 20%, and my plans do say 25, so we'll have to correct that. But I just found the characteristics of, you know, in Westhampton Beach, there's a lot of homes with pools and tennis
We're a
courts.
resort community, Westhampton Beach, you know, of course, we're gonna have pools around there.
And like decks
Jim?
around the pools.
Right, Mr. Yu? You know, of course, we're not anti-pool by any means, but, you know, the lot coverage is a real issue, and especially this is an R4 district, so you're going against that too.
Sure. you know, I think that there's a conversation that could be had with the owners about that. I obviously can't make that decision for them,
Of course
but.
not, but, you know, 32% or whatever, what are we going to, 32 point something, 30, whatever.
32.7.
32, well, almost 33% lot coverage is a
Mhm.
big, big reach there,
Sure,
okay?
sure.
And I know, I understand, because I've met Art, you know, and I know he's here for the summertime, and he helps watch the family, and so I know that they, you know, they have that tennis cabana, right? And this, you know, the tool shed is, the tool shed. We understand they
I
want to
mean,
make
like
the
I said, I
property a
think-
little bit more, but,
Sure.
and this is, the addition is almost gonna double the size of the house.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot, as we balance this out, there's a lot of things, we know what you're living next to, as
Sure.
far as the restaurant goes.
Yeah,
you
the
know,
commercial
and You
space.
have nobody behind you on Pine Street, but
That's
you
right.
have neighbors to
It
the
is a
north.
through lot.
You have neighbors to the north we have to consider also, and how
Sure.
that impacts them.
Sure.
Okay, so, there's quite a balancing test here, and I just think it's a big reach for that district to go that far with a lot coverage.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, obviously, I think the pool's important, and I think,
Mhm.
I think getting the accessory building, obviously, we could think about making that smaller. I think the question really is how big, it is required to be a certain square footage so that we can make it into an accessory apartment. And then maybe we can look at the addition. I think right off the bat, though, that the discussion might be, let's get rid of the deck and do like more of a patio or something. Maybe that's something I need to speak to them about, so that would reduce our lot coverage, not having the attached deck to the home. And, you know, I could think about something like that with them. So, with all that feedback, I mean, I think it sounds like I would have to have a discussion with the owners.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Any
can
board
we
members,
adjourn
anybody have
for,
anything they wanna,
oh,
ask
sorry.
me?
No.
Yeah, it's, you know, you have a pretty heavy lift, you know, in some of these areas. I don't know if the tool shed is gonna be enough of a bargaining chip, you know?
Small joke.
The cabana, you know, I don't remember a time of turning a cabana into living quarters, you know, here on the board. I mean, we've had situations where applicants have wanted to take the cabana and turn it into a game room, and that lasted through 2 or 3 meetings, you know, as a work through. But living quarters, I've never seen it myself. I've been on for a couple of years. Lot coverage is definitely an issue. I can see the background of when it was built in the 70s, and that tennis court, it really didn't count as lot coverage, you know, back then. That's 50 years ago.
Yeah,
You know, it's 2023, it's a new day.
sure.
We're going up to 30%, you know, lot coverage. You really have to look at this really, really hard to bring it, to scale it down.
Sure.
A lot of, a lot of accessories, a lot of amenities there. You know, accessory apartment, swimming pool, tennis court, hot tub, sauna, you know, 2-car garage,
I'll
Sure.
tell you, we'd all like to just
you
spend
know,
a weekend
and the
there.
tool shed, if it applies.
Sure.
You know, so,
Yeah, I mean, you know, I live on that block as well, so knowing that it is a large lot compared to other lots on that block. So I think, you know, I do think the mass of it handles
How
it.
big is lot, it's like 6/10 of an acre?
Oh, the
is
lot
that?
itself is 24,910
Okay, so
square
it's
feet, so
still
almost
more
an
than half
acre.
It's
I'm
over
almost half an acre, sorry.
Well over half an acre, so that's,
But
know.
I mean, really, what's in question here is the tennis court. I mean, in my opinion, it's the tennis court, right? It's like, the tennis court wasn't there, we wouldn't have the lot coverage issue. So, you know, they don't wanna get rid of the tennis court, or, I mean, that's something that they're really against, at least, and maybe after this meeting and having a further conversation with them, they maybe have to consider, doing a half a tennis court.
let me throw this out there. Pickleball. Pickleball.
Well, you can also
Well-
put half a tennis court, build a wall, and then play with yourself.
Well, I'm just saying, you're talking about,
Yeah,
you know,
same-
cutting, you know,
same
cutting the
idea.
square footage down by quite a bit.
No, yeah, the tennis court is the problem. I mean, I explained that to them, and I think they understand that. But, okay. Well, I think if you guys can allow me an adjournment, I'll spend some time with them and discuss it, and try to
Absolutely.
come up with a
Sure.
proposal that makes a little more sense to the board. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
appreciate it.
Do you guys have anything you wanna add to tonight's meeting? We're gonna be holding it over for all purposes. Do you guys have anything you wanna add tonight?
Not tonight, we'll do it.
Okay, does anybody else have any comment on this before we move on? No, okay, so I'll make a motion, we hold this over for all purposes.
Second.
Second by Jim, all in favor? Okay. Okay, Kareem and Allison Kufari, 31 Exchange Place. Applicant requests variances from 197-35C to retain a section of an attached accessory deck constructed 17 feet from property line where the minimum required is 20 feet.
Good evening, Nicholas Vero, architect, 120 Mill Road, Westhampton Beach, for the applicant. The application before you has a building permit. Building permit was issued by Mr. Hammond, requesting that they cut the deck back. I originally had it out to match the second floor deck that's above our head. So basically, we were looking for permission to add a lower deck in the same footprint as the upper deck, realizing that we were off by 3 feet to the property line for accessory structure on this particular piece of property in the zone that we're in. So we're basically asking to match this deck to the deck above your head.
Uh-huh. We understand that, but you say you're asking permission to build it.
Well, we got a well, they started building the deck with, they saw the building permit, they didn't read the fine line, that had to cut back 3 feet,
Right?
okay?
And it's
so
there.
That's where, yes, it is there.
Uh-huh.
It's there.
Got it.
So, you've been to the property, you've seen the back of the house.
You've seen it,
You've seen, we're not
you've
increasing
seen
the,
it's there.
well, it can be cut back, if that's, what the board,
Yeah.
is looking to do, but it is there.
Questions, anybody? Board members, anything? This is a pretty straightforward one, Nick, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just go ahead and make a motion that we close this hearing. Second by Dan, all in favor? Okay. Looks like every other one here is easy. Okay.
And this next one's there too.
You got this next one? All right. Gonna even up here, I guess, huh? Charles and Joanne Aluso, 503 Dune Road. The applicant requests variances from 94.5C2 for a proposed addition to a building within the coastal erosion hazard area where prohibited, from 197AD for a proposed front yard setback of 55.5 feet where the minimum required is 75 feet, from 197.29(1)A for a proposed two-story addition, which represents a prohibited increase in the degree of nonconformity of a dwelling within a substandard side yard setback, 14.9 feet provided, 20 required, from 197.35C for a proposed front deck side yard setback of 14.9 feet where the minimum required is 20 feet, and from 197.35C to retain a portion of the rear deck constructed 15.4 feet from the side property line and 31.6 feet from the crest of the dune, where the minimum required is 20 foot and 75 foot respectively. Mr. Bureau.
Nicholas Vera, 120 Mill Road, Westhampton Beach, for the applicants, the Palusos. I'd like to just break down this into 2 phases, if you don't mind. I'd like to talk about the front addition before we get to the back.
Good.
Non-conforming deck that was built however many years ago. So the Palusos are looking to put a small, modest addition on this house. The house, I believe it's about 2,200 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. They're looking to expand a second floor bedroom, get a laundry room up on the second floor, and add a dining area to the front of their house. Pretty much on existing decks that are there right now. So our front yard setback to the proposed deck from the property line would be 55.5 feet. I think the addition, the setback to the addition is about 68 feet, if I'm not mistaken. We're looking to match the existing side yards that exist, the 14.9 feet. We're not going to increase the degree of nonconformity. If you look at the other setback on the east side of the property, 24.8 feet. So we're close to being conforming total side yard setbacks. Again, the existing lot, 71.59 feet wide, which is typical of those lots in that area. This board, as you know, have granted some similar variances. Most recently, we have a variance, side yard setbacks and front yard setbacks, 511 Dune Road, which was a reconstruct of a fire damaged house that I did. 56 feet to the front yard, 11.3 and 11.8 side yard setbacks respectively. And that's pretty much right in the neighborhood. 501 Dune Road was one that we did many years ago, where we had a 36.9-foot front yard setback. We talked about Hoffer before, 445, their side yard setbacks. Interestingly enough, when I did 185 Dune Road, which is the Tobin residence, we got to maintain an existing rear yard setback to the crest of Dune of 35 feet. And we were allowed to put a small pool in that existing deck when we reconstructed that house. And again, we have 317 Dune Road, which was a recent one that I did, where we maintained an existing side yard setback of 14.8 feet. And we also maintained a top of dune setback, I believe it was 45 feet, to the deck. And those were recently granted.
I thought we were
it's-
talking about the front yard.
We are talking about the front. So I just went back to,
So
again,
You're
511.
going back to crest of the dune stuff, it's not front yard, so.
I
let's
apologize.
keep it-
I'll recite those again in a second.
I know.
So 511 Dune Road and 501 Dune Road, which are 501 and 503 are next door to each other. So we have a similar situation there. Existing house, nonconformities with reference to setbacks. We can't obviously push the house and add to the rear of the house because of the location of the crest of the dune.
Mhm.
So we're looking for variances for the front yard and the side yard in order to do a modest addition on this house.
So the side yard's gonna stay the same
Side yard stays the same, correct?
if you come a little bit further
That's correct,
forward,
yes.
and you want a front yard setback, yeah.
It's 55.5 feet to the entry deck, but it is 68 feet to the addition.
Nick, what are we doing septic-wise on this?
We have not adding a bedroom, so we're not doing septic, so.
Or you're not adding
No,
a
we're
bedroom?
not adding a bedroom, we're expanding a bedroom. There's no expansion to
Okay.
bedroom deck. There's one very small bedroom upstairs, and she just wanted to get a second floor laundry room and redo a bathroom upstairs for one of the daughters. They've owned this house for a very, very long time. So now, if you'd like, I'd like to talk about the rear deck. Unbeknownst to me, and I think that Mr. Hammond pointed this out to me when I started getting involved, and several other people walked into his office a few years ago looking to do the same thing, and Brad had pointed out that a deck was built on this property. Or the deck was expanded on this property, which was different from what had existed when they built this house. I don't know if you guys saw any of the existing surveys, you want to pass those around. This is when the house was built, you can see the size of the deck. Pretty much about half the size as it is right now. And I'm just wanted to give you history here. I think I have a survey that Mr. Hammond pointed out to me that was submitted to him back in, well, not to him personally, but to the building department in 2003, that showed the deck expanded on the southeast corner of the property. Don't mind passing those around? That had a hot tub on that deck. And I do believe there may have been a permit for that, although I can't really find one. But that's the survey that was in one of the files that building inspector said we can kind of hang our hats on, okay? So the area of the deck that we're looking to get permission to maintain is that area showing that void of where the hot tub was, and the deck was to what we have today. And that will require you granting a variance of 31.6 feet to maintain that deck. Now, we can do one of two things. We can close the look to close the hearing and ask for permission to maintain that deck. We can ask that, or we can tell you that we're gonna take that area of deck that was built without a permit away, or we can ask for a compromise. And that compromise would be maintaining,
Oh, it's got the compromise already ready.
Joe, if you don't mind passing those around again. You'll see a shaded area that's on an angle of the deck, that we can look to cut back, and that would maintain the existing setback that existed with that middle survey that I gave you showing the hot tub of 42.8 feet to the crest of the dune. It would give them, some of their deck, or get to maintain some of the deck, giving us the compromise that I think, this board may look at favorably.
Nick, again, what is that doing, this last one?
The last one is cutting that deck on the diagonal to give us some deck space back. So it was from the existing setback where that hot tub was in the middle survey that I gave you.
Right.
To what it had existed on the southwest corner of the deck. Okay, so it's basically cutting the deck that they built illegally in half.
So that's a proposal to put it on an angle.
Mhm.
Now, what about taking the hot tub,
The hot tub doesn't exist anymore, Joe, it's gone. There's
I
no-
understand that, but I mean, that was allowed back then.
I believe so. I think that's what we said, that we can, it was there, it was on that survey that we pulled out of that file that was in one of the building permit files. I'm sorry. Did they give you a copy of that? May I have one of those? One with the hot tub. I believe it might be. That's the one that you.
Right, yeah.
Now, what about adding that space where the hot tub is and the deck around it to the original deck?
I don't follow the question.
No, I don't either.
And, squaring it off.
Well, right now it exists. Right now it's squared off.
Well, you added to it, you didn't square it off. I'm talking about taking just the square footage of what you have existing,
Right.
using that, say that's 40 square feet.
Okay.
And just adding that 40 square feet of, lengthwise across.
That's a good compromise too.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Joe, you wanna run that by us?
Where the hot tub and the deck around the hot tub is, let's call it, just say 40 square feet. And take that and just run it lengthwise,
Yeah.
across here.
How does that compare to what's there now?
It's not gonna increase in any square footage.
It's probably the same square footage, is what Joe was saying, so take that square footage of that square area where the hot tub used to be.
Right.
From that middle survey, whatever that was. I believe it's 144 square feet, because I think it's 12 by 12.
Okay.
And take 144 square feet and just add it to the back of the deck and square it off, so it becomes a rectangle, not as big as it is now, but certainly it gets you back your setback.
Instead of a triangle.
Instead of the triangle. The triangle maintains the 42.8 foot setback from the crest of the dune that existed from that survey that shows the hot tub. That was that, and there's no crest of dune on there. Actually, there is a crest of dune, but it's, so close to the ocean, so it was inaccurate at the time. So our new survey shows exactly where the top of that dune is.
I think what he's saying is
Yeah, go straight across, east to
do
west.
something like that. This would become less. So this would get all chopped off, I think.
Yes, I think you have that right. Joe, did he do that right? Did Jim do that right? Is that what you're looking at?
Exactly right.
Like you're basically
Yes.
chopping
Yeah.
off a little.
Right, so whatever that square footage would be of 144
Good.
square feet, we just add it to the back of the deck. I mean, that's a good compromise too. That actually makes life easier because of the structure that's there.
And this wood platform's gonna come out?
That wood platform's coming out,
That's coming out?
absolutely.
Gone, okay.
Gone.
This one is gone.
And it shows it on existing, it's a 9 by 9.5 platform,
Mhm.
built without a benefit of permit, going away.
Okay.
In fact, I think it's gone already.
Yeah.
Standing on
So
it on
is it,
Tuesday.
I was, okay.
I don't
It
think
was
it
supposed,
wasn't
they were
gone
gonna take it
yesterday.
down, okay.
You on it today? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that's coming out.
That's coming out, and we're looking to, cut the deck back and however you wanna cut the pie, if that's the compromise.
How
Of
long's
course,
the
my
deck,
cli-
how long's the deck been there, Nick?
Well, of course, my client told me they hired somebody back in 2003 to build the deck with a permit, and of course, that didn't happen, so that's what I was told.
So that's like, been there since
Oh, yeah, it's probably been there
2003,
since at least,
20
maybe
years?
probably in the 90s. I think it's there since the 90s.
I remember that hot tub in the eighties back there.
Do you really? Yeah, I don't know, so.
The wooden hot tub.
I wouldn't know. Oh, wooden hot tub. Oh, okay, yeah. Built out of a barrel.
All right.
Showing off.
Used to sell those,
So
right?
that's-
Is it buildable?
So what would the dimensions be of that deck? Because we're gonna have, how far back from the crest of the dune is that gonna be?
You wanna give me 2 seconds to try to calculate this out for you?
Because
Do
if
the
we
best
do
I
that, we
can.
have to know
Give me a
exactly what
second.
it is.
Give me a second.
Yes.
Probably 5 feet by 26 and a half feet wide, approximately. I'm just doing the math on top of my head.
The reduced deck.
Yeah.
And how far from the crest of the dune would the closest point be?
Probably looks like we're gonna make it maybe 36 feet. If you look at the the 31.6 foot setback
Yeah.
on my site plan,
Mhm.
we're probably gonna add 5 feet to that.
Well, if we're gonna do a variance like this, it can't be probably.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
I'd have to give you the exact numbers once I put it in the computer. So if I hand that to you, early part of next week, you'll have the exact numbers from me.
Well, we can tell you what we want it to be.
You could tell me what you want it to be. You could tell me right now. I'm guessing it's about 36, so if you want it to be 36. I was proposing 42.8, but that was cutting the deck back on an angle.
That was cutting the deck back on
Right,
the angle.
right. I like this one better because it just,
I don't know, maybe.
squares up their deck a
I
little
think Joe was talking from a practicality point of view.
bit.
For a deck that's been there for 20 years. That deck, did that deck look 20 years old to you?
It looks old.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you want to give me the number, we'll put it on there.
I think we'll have to have a discussion about that. We'll let you know what it's gonna be. Okay? I don't wanna make that decision just arbitrarily right now.
When will you let me know?
When the decision's ready?
Okay, then that's fair. Okay.
Can we,
Hold on.
two
I think
things.
We need a drawing. It's in the,
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
it's too sensitive of an area. It's gonna change the setback numbers. I'm not comfortable. If it were a simple squaring off or something like that, I could write it up, but
Okay,
I-
that's even better.
Yeah, I
this
would
map
pref-
shows the
I'd
wood
prefer to do
platform. I'd like
No,
to
the
see
platform
something
is
without
coming.
the platform.
I would prefer to do
Platform's
that, yes.
I know, but it's not on the drawings we have, so I would
Gotcha.
like to
I would
have an
prefer to do that.
approvable survey
Yes.
or site plan from Nick that
Mhm.
takes away the platform
Right.
and
Shows the dimension of the deck
proposes whatever the deck dimension is.
Can-
and the setback to the crest of the dome.
Yeah.
And a revised front yard setback too, because it was showing 55.5, but you said that
Right.
that's just the deck, so we need
Right.
something to the.
To the village, sure, okay.
Yeah,
So
and-
I'd like to revise
and-
that,
I
and
absolutely.
the-
prefer it to be held over, I mean, unless there's some urgency that we don't know of.
Well, there is and there isn't, only because of, you've been to the property, I don't know if everybody's been there, but,
Yes.
we're trying to do some repair on, that house has not been maintained. That house is just a mess right now, so we're trying to at least get the windows ordered so we can do the front part of the house, granted, providing we're getting the variance. So if we
Mhm.
could close the hearing, providing I give you those dimensions by Tuesday of next week or Wednesday the latest, so you have time to, and you'll have those exact dimensions.
If the board doesn't have a problem with the front yard thing, I don't see, well,
Well,
we're talking about the
how we looking
deck.
at the front yard? The front yard variance,
It's fine.
I'm okay with it.
okay? I'm okay with the front yard variance. So we're talking about the crest of the dune setback.
Just straw poll the front yard thing so they can order?
Well, I mean, if it's a matter of that they just need a comfort level to.
Yeah.
To,
windows aren't coming for 12 weeks, so.
All right, so then,
Yeah.
I think you have your
Yeah.
straw
Comfort
poll,
level.
you have your straw poll on the front yard side.
Okay?
It's a
No,
question of what the
The rear
rear
yard.
part's gonna be,
Mm-hmm.
which that you can deal with during the construction process, so. You don't need to pre-order anything to remove the deck, right?
Absolutely. And I was willing to remove the deck before I came to this board, so.
Yeah, I just think we need a good survey on this, that shows exactly what they're proposing.
Okay.
So if we cut it back to, if we cut it, or just add 6 feet straight across from where the deck was, that gives me 140
What's the
square.
square footage of the deck right now?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, I'd have to see what my breakdown is here.
Mhm.
It's not that big. But I can tell you the area where the hot tub was 12 by 12.
Mhm.
So if we're taking that 12 square, so we're 24, we're about 500, almost 600 square feet. So we'd be cutting it back by 144 approximately, or half the 144.
I would suggest this, let them come back and propose something, because you can always at that point say, I'm not comfortable with that or not, but I don't like the idea of us telling them what setback to have, because they really should be proposing something.
Yeah, so I'll give you
Okay.
the
And
setback.
then you can rule
That's-
on it,
That's
whether
fair.
you approve it or not, but,
Mhm.
I'll give you the setback, and
Yeah.
that's what we should do. 100% correct.
yeah. And you should be able to close it out the next time, regardless.
Understood. That's the smart thing to do.
Okay. Is there anybody else that needs to be heard on this application?
Good. I don't have anything else for you tonight, Nick, so if we don't have anybody else, have Joe canvassed already. So I'll make a motion, we just hold this over for, next month.
Second.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Where are we now? Back to First Dunes, 496 LLC. 496 Dune Road applicant requests variances from 197-8B for a two-lot subdivision with proposed lot areas of 13,441 and 14,793 square feet, where the minimum required is 20,000 square feet, and featuring proposed lot widths of 80 feet, where the minimum required is 100 feet. Applicant also requests variances associated with proposed single-family development of 2 potential lots from 197-8D for a proposed rear yard setback for lot 1 of 67 feet, where the minimum required is 75 feet, and also from 197-8D for proposed combined side yard setbacks for both lots of 40 feet, where the minimum required is 50 feet.
Good evening. For the applicant, James N. Hume, 323
Jim.
Mill Road,
Okay.
Westhampton Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So as the chairman indicated, this should be somewhat familiar. Back in December, I think it was December, this board granted relief for this project to allow the creation of the 2 lots.
Yes.
With the reduced lot area and the reduced lot width, but declined to grant the variances necessary for the proposed homes that we had on those 2 properties. So we took a look at this, we've sharpened the pencil a little bit, and we've come back with a very similar application, but, and I'll talk in a minute about how it's changed, but with a differently sized proposed homes for the property, and we're now seeking the variances necessary for that. Not to put too fine a point on this, but as we've discussed in the past with the other application, and in fact, while I'm thinking of it, I'd like to ask the board to incorporate everything that was part of that prior hearing into this hearing as well, if that meets with your approval, just save us some time in the record anyway. My clients have actually done such a nice job in running the 8 units there and running that business that this question has come up, well, why not just build a house? Well, because it doesn't make economic sense to do that. 2 houses make sense two houses of the size that we're now proposing still makes some economic sense, but not, probably not a much smaller home. Smaller homes here, I think, would be inappropriately small for the neighborhood, and we'll have a brief discussion about that. But that's why we have persisted in this manner, because the business is good right now. So, and these things are all economic decisions anyway, so a single house there doesn't make good economic sense, whereas two houses, even at this size, still makes economic sense, and my clients can build the houses, sell them, and move on. But in any event, we've made a couple of adjustments, I think, significant adjustments from the last time. One was to reduce each of the individual side yards to 20 feet. So now we no longer need that relief. We just need the relief for the total side yard of 40 as opposed to 50. The other thing we did was that we reduced the lot coverage down to 20%. So we eliminated the need for that variance as well. And that accounts for why these relative square footages of the two lots have changed by a few hundred square feet from what you originally approved, and that was we had to skew the central property line as it approached the water a little bit, so we would get enough land on both sides to get down to the 20% lot coverage, and so that explains that. So basically, as indicated, the relief that we're now looking for is a lot area of 13,441 for one lot and 14,793 for the other lot. That represents a difference of approximately 200 square feet up and then down from what you granted the prior time. We're looking for the 80-foot lot width for each of them, which is virtually identical to the relief that you had granted last time. And we're looking for a small a bit of relief, 67 versus 75 feet for the rear yard setback, the setback from the water. The total side yard is somewhat typical for the narrow lots, although the planning board will be creating narrow lots with these variances. They don't already exist, but it's not unusual, I don't think, for this board when we can go to the 20 feet that they give the relief for the total side yard. The rear yard, 67 to 75, also not that unusual. I had a project last fall where I believe we got even more relief than that for the rear yard setback. There is some suggestion that 75 feet is a lot of setback for the bay side. That makes a lot of sense to protect the dune on the ocean side, but many of the homes up and down the bay on Dune Road are closer to 50 feet than they are to the 75 feet. As I indicated, the lot width you really essentially granted already, and the lot area you had granted already, essentially, in the last go-round. And I think some of the information I provided last time indicates that the average lot width in the area is 76 feet. We're at 80 feet, so we're right there. The average total side yard is actually 32 feet in the area, and we're proposing something at 40 feet. So I think all in all, although the average lot area in the area is a little bit bigger than what the average that we're proposing, which is about 14,000 square feet, many of the homes are below the 20,000 square feet. So and I think you already determined that lots of this size wouldn't be offensive to the character of the neighborhood. So for all of those reasons, and that's what we're here for.
Jim, you're aware we got a new letter today from a neighbor?
Yes.
Did you get to see that?
I did.
Do you need to comment on that?
I think I did by my comment about the neighborhood analysis that was previously submitted.
I think he was concerned about the total side yard setbacks.
Right. I believe that's true, but I think that we're
narrow lots. I mean,
yeah. And as I indicated, if you start at 486 and you go all the way down to 506, eliminating our lot, the average total side yard is 32.65 feet, and what we're proposing is 40. So
I also see this neighbor, if I got it right, he was the neighbor directly to the west.
Yes.
So you have one of the cottages is practically on his,
Yes,
I mean,
right.
really
it's-
on
I think
behind
the
it.
setback of one of those cottages is less than a foot, so.
less than a foot,
Yeah,
yeah.
so, now whatever's
So
gonna
I
be
think
built there
this
is
would
gonna go
be,
to 20 feet.
I don't think, is he here tonight? I don't even, oh, was that your letter?
No, but I have,
Okay, we'll get to you then, we
Okay.
just talk about the specific letter. Okay, cause I thought that, it just seemed to me that,
This would be better for him,
I would think it would be, I understand.
Rather than having 8 neighbors, one of which is a foot away, he'll have one
this
neighbor,
it?
which is gonna be 20 feet away, so.
Mr. Trombetta, okay.
He was the civil engineer,
Side
I
yard
think, right?
setback to allow for 40 feet, which is 10 feet less than the required 50 feet. Okay, I just, we did take that into consideration. I mean, we all read the letter. I know you got a copy of it
Right.
too. So, thank you for addressing that. I don't have anything else for you right now, Mr. Yoon.
Thank you.
Board members, anybody have anything? Sir, it's up to you.
I spoke at the last hearing.
Could you just, state
Oh,
your name,
my
please?
name's Dick Richardson. I have a house at 504 Dune Road. I've been there almost 30 years. And I spoke, last time we had a thing, I think it was August 18th. So I got the new stuff in. Well, before I start, I was down there working today and I had a phone call from the neighbor on the west. And I have a copy. I didn't have anyway, she sent me a copy of her letter.
That was one, I think we were just talking about.
Just talking about. I was gonna read it tonight, but since you got it, I won't read it. Is that okay, or should I read it? I told her I would read it.
Is this Lauren
Right.
Trombetta?
Yeah, she's the architect or something like that.
Civil engineer, I believe.
Right,
she said,
right, and
huh?
she asked me to
Yeah.
read her letter tonight, so she texted me on the phone, so, but if you've got it, I don't have to.
No, we have it, and Mr. Hume has seen it, so unless
Okay.
you feel it necessary to go ahead and read it, then.
No, well, first of
think-
all, it's in small print, and I'm 88
We have-
years old, and I
we-
can hardly read it,
We
okay?
have it right here, so.
Okay, good, good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Uh,
I strongly
I could-
oppose,
I could-
go
I
ahead.
can summarize this a little bit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, this is, she's really opposed to the total side yard setbacks. And also the 67,
Yeah, I didn't understand that
67
either,
feet.
67.
She has percentage, but I think that should be feet. Oh, no, the lot sizes, she doesn't like the smaller lot sizes.
Right,
But when we looked at this application, just to revisit, because I know you were here before,
right.
when we looked at this application, we're looking at 8 cottages,
I understand that.
right? That were going to really greatly improve that property.
Well,
With the
that's,
septic and also the fact that it's gonna be homes instead of, cottages that are in and out. So I think that's one of the basics.
I understand that, but
Okay.
if you put in, my biggest thing is
Mhm.
that, well, first of all, it said that the lot width has gotta be 100 feet. The last time I was here, then I get a thing that you've already approved that it's 80, so has it been subdivided already?
When the last hearing was when Mr. Hume presented this application several months ago,
Right.
we approved the subdivision. What we didn't approve was the variances for the houses at the time. So that's all been redone now, and this is the new application. But we had already approved the lots. So yes,
At 80 feet,
yes.
right?
correct.
Okay, but my lot is 80, and one thing that he said is wrong, my neighbor, not two houses down, they got 160, they got a double lot. Okay, I think
Okay.
mine's 80,
Yours is 80, and these two are gonna be 80.
right? Okay, so the other thing was the side yard. Now the
Correct.
side yard should be, was it 25 feet?
Now, the side yard setback in this zoning is 20 feet on each side.
Right.
No, it can be no less than 20 feet on each side, and total should be 50 feet.
50.
So if it's 20 on one side, it should be 30 on the other, to give you 50 feet, okay? But what the applicant is applying for tonight is to have 20 feet on each side, which is the minimum required side yard on either side.
So they don't even
Instead of
need-
having 50 total, he's gonna have 40 total. But it's still gonna maintain the 20 feet, which is the minimum required.
The other thing that really objects, if you're gonna write, he bought the property, was 160 feet, okay, yeah, the Dimples has been there a long time, yeah, they're a pain, but fine, we live with them. But he bought it as 160 feet, okay?
Yes, sir.
So, the best thing he could do is to build a beautiful home, one home. He wouldn't make as much money, but it would be nicer for the area. Now, you're gonna have two houses alongside each other, just like you go down to the dunes, which is horrible.
Well, now,
They're close.
the Westhampton Beach, we're
West-
talking about maintaining our minimum side yards here at Westhampton Beach.
So
I don't
it-
know what the dunes are, but I understand where you're coming from, they're too close, but we have the side yard setbacks here.
So if you had a new
We
piece,
have, here I'm maintaining the
if
side
you
yard
had
setbacks.
a new piece of property,
Yes, sir.
they wouldn't have to, so they don't have to get a variance for a side yard.
No, they have, they don't have the total side yards.
Oh.
That's the combination of the two, a 20 and a 30. They have a 20 and a 20. And that's why these are called variances. I mean, things come up and they have to be sorted out and looked at. Your property is 80 feet wide.
Right.
These lots are 80 feet wide.
Right.
This is brand new construction, brand new septic. It's replacing transient cottages that have been there for ages.
Well, yeah, I know, they come from Camp Upton, 1949 they were moved there, okay? But it just seems like to me, these two big houses, first of all, they bought it as 160 feet, so that says, the reason he said, oh, yeah, I'm gonna make two houses and make more money, I just don't, and it's gonna look, they're gonna just be two big new houses, horrible looking.
Well, this is.
What I'd like to see, and what all the neighbors would like to see, is one home in the middle, that would be nice.
It's still America, I mean.
I
that's,
understand that.
We don't tell people,
No, no.
what they must do.
Okay.
But Mr. Ritson.
Yes.
If I'm following this correctly, these two properties are gonna be the same size as yours.
Right, but mine was zoned in 1960. That's when the house was
I
built.
understand that, sir.
So-
that You've been there for a long time, but they're still not gonna get anything more than what you have.
Well, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that, yeah, but.
Yes, sir.
What are your setbacks?
What?
What are your setbacks? Side yard setbacks?
Well, you're asking me to talk, it's not.
You don't know?
I don't know, I've been
Okay.
there so long.
Okay.
It's a beautiful spot.
13 and 23, for a total of 36.
Yeah.
So,
Is that right? That's, you
his
have that?
setbacks are 13 and 23.
I submitted that previously.
Oh, well, okay, thank you. That's right, previous records,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's all I
So
have to say.
they're gonna have more than you have as far as the setbacks.
Yeah, but my house is, you're gonna be, I just.
Well,
you
there are
don't
high
know that.
requirements here, they can only go up so high, they can't,
They
they
can't.
can't go up too high.
Yeah.
We do, they're now requesting a height variance and,
Yeah. Anyways, an education sitting out there.
Yeah.
You guys have got a tough job, I'll tell you right now.
thank you for recognizing that.
I'm done, I
We try and do
guess.
our best for the village. We
Yeah.
all live here,
You
we
don't
all
have
live
to
here
tell
in the
me.
village, so we all wanna
Okay.
do our best for our village.
Thank you.
Thank you
For your time,
concern.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anybody else? So Jim, are you all set?
Yep.
I didn't have anything else on this application, so I'm gonna make a motion that we go ahead and close this,
Yeah.
close this hearing for a decision. And obviously, John is seconding that, so I'll make that motion, that John is seconded, and we will, move forward, huh?
Okay.
Yeah, right? Okay, now we're up to number 9, grand finale, here we go. Mr. Hume, I guess, right? New York Cancer and Blood Specialist, 40 Main Street. The applicant requests variances from 197.7A for a proposed conversion of counseling building for use as medical offices with exam rooms were not specifically permitted. All right.
For the applicant, James
Hi,
N.
Jim.
Hume, 323 Mill Road, Westhampton Beach. And as the chairman, it's probably one of the shortest descriptions, I think, of variance relief I've ever seen. But this is
Just read what's there.
a lot to unpack here.
Excuse me a second. Mr. Richardson, I'm sorry, sir, but the noise will carry onto our recording. You could just step outside for conversation if you need to. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Jim. I'm
And
sorry.
so simply put, the applicant here is seeking to convert an existing accessory building on the St. Mark's property from a counseling center to medical offices. I have somebody here from the applicant tonight who I'd like her to introduce herself and then briefly explain what it is they have planned for this location, subject obviously to this board's
What
approval.
kind of a variance are you looking for here?
Well, that's a good question. You know, if you read my papers, I have at least 3 different theories of why you
Yeah.
should grant this. And I'll go through them in more detail in a few minutes, but I did want you to get a little flavor of the value to this community that this function may have before we got into the nuts and bolts, with your permission. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Who's coming up?
Good evening. Rich McMullen, CFO for New York Cancer and Blood Specialists.
Mhm.
McMullen. I don't have a card on me. It's McMullen. No problem. So yes, New York Cancer and Blood Specialists, we are a large cancer center. We are looking to put in a women's imaging center at the site.
A what, sir?
A women's imaging center,
Women's Imaging Center.
yes.
Mhm.
In addition, a space for a charitable foundation that helps with patient assistance. And so we are, we've noticed that there is a lack of women's imaging and women's health centers in the area, and we think that it would be beneficial to the neighborhood and to the community. And so that's what we are looking to do.
Where are your other centers?
So we are all throughout Long Island and New York, the 5 boroughs. We have imaging centers, also so in Forest Hills, in Lake Success, in Riverhead, in Patchogue, Port Jefferson, Port Jeff Station. We have cancer centers all along the island, now starting to move upstate as well.
I got a quick question. Women's Imaging Center. What is that going to entail? What are we talking about there?
So, mammography, treatment for women-specific cancers and imaging and radiology.
Just women's?
Yes,
That's what you're looking for?
in
just-
that center, yeah.
So imaging and treatment.
Correct.
And what kind of treatment are we talking about? Cancer and blood?
Yes,
what-
so we are medical oncology, hematology oncology.
Uh-huh.
So, yes, treatment of cancer, basically.
Now, expand on that. When you say treatment, is that, in and out treatment? Is that how that's,
Yeah, no one would stay over. It's you come in for your treatment, and then you leave. It's not a stay over sort of facility.
Okay. So, for now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is not a hospital. This is, not a walk-in center, but people would have
Mhm.
appointments and come in and have the imaging done and have whatever necessary treatment. But as indicated, they wouldn't remain overnight or for long periods of time, that kind of thing. And it is proposed in the building known as the Beinecke Building, which is located on the campus of St. Mark's. As we all know from wandering around this fair village of ours, the church is there. It's on a 4.2 acre site. There's the main church structure. There's an annex connected to the back of the church, which houses the offices, the meeting rooms, and where church provides a lot of its services. And then there's this other 3,400 square foot building that we're talking about occupying for this new use. You know, I gave you in the application a whole bunch of COs, but I don't think I gave you the CO that was pertinent to this particular part of the project. There was in 1986 a CO issued for the building itself that we're talking about. Let me have one of those back. And it was permitted back then, apparently without a variance, as a one-story general purpose family counseling office building. The building was then built with the 3,400 square feet that it exists today. The footprint will remain. All of the renovations that are proposed for this project are proposed for inside the building. It's not going to change the footprint of the building. So we're, in addition to being in front of this board, we will ultimately be in front of the planning board for a modification of site plan, I believe is what the building inspector described it as, just derived from the change in use. The variance is necessary because this property, surprised me, is zoned R2, residential 2.
Really?
Interestingly enough, to the north is R2. To the east, directly to the east, is B1. So I had always assumed, without looking or thinking about it, that this was part of the B1, but it was not. To the south is the Great Lawn, which is also zoned R2, but is preserved in perpetuity, other than the lighthouse that apparently is going to be installed there. And then to the, maybe, or at least it's parked there at the moment. And to the west is the Westhampton Country Club, which is also a surprise to me, zoned R1. So it is in and surrounded on at least two sides by residential zoning, but by residential zoning that will never be residential.
And yet its use was family counseling.
It was, the building was built for family counseling, which is a form of medical, and that is supportive of one of the theories I have for why you should consider granting the relief that we're looking for here. But in any event.
Was it part of the religious use though, or not?
No.
It's not, it's
No.
never been?
No, not this building, no. It's always been an ancillary. I mean, as I'll talk about in a little bit more detail later, the church certainly relies on the income from the use to which this building has been put in order to advance its own services, and I think in a lot of ways views that and will view this as kind of an extension of the services that they provide to the community. But it was not itself religious and a religious use or religious in nature. But I think kind of a unique little part of the world here because of the uses that this property has been put to and the uses to which the neighboring properties are put to. So as I said, there's in thinking about this, there's a couple of different things that occurred to me. That this is really, one of them is this is really just the continuation of an accessory use of this property that's already existed since this building was built. It was counseling. This is medical treatment. But if you go through there also been a children's daycare center there for a while as well on the campus. But if you go through the uses in the building code, I would venture to guess that both the counseling use and this use would fall into the same or very similar categories. They both have the same, the national code system that is recited in the code. I believe it's chapter 62 of the NAICS that covers all of these uses. So in that regard, whether it's this imaging center, cancer treatment center, or a counseling center, I think it falls into the kind of the same general category of use. And so one theory would suggest that this is just a continuation of that already existing, already permitted accessory use on the property. Another thought I had was the pre-existing non-conforming status of 197-29. Again, similar use, same parking requirements, no change, no physical change to the site is necessary for, other than the variance to allow the use at all, is necessary. But again, this is a use in substitution for a use that was already legally there, and I would suggest is very similar in nature. But eventually, I think we get to the idea of a use variance, because this is not a permitted use in the R2, nor was the counseling business, nor was the daycare business that was seen. So but in any event, we need to look at the standards that go across with the use variance, and I'm going to do them in reverse order of complexity. I just think it'll be simpler that way. The last requirement is that it's the minimum relief necessary. Well, we're not making any physical change to the site. No need to add parking, no need to add other structure. Need to renovate the building, yes, for the use. So
Renovations on the inside.
in the inside, yes. Yes.
And you don't need to add parking?
No, because the parking requirement, that's part of my point. The parking requirement for this use, I believe, is exactly the same as the parking requirement for the use that it's replacing. And so that's one of the legs of the stool that suggests that this is really just a different face of the same use going forward. The fourth is not self-created. The need to provide this service, the need for the church to benefit economically from allowing this service to be provided on their campus, the need of the church to put this legally existing building to a proper and appropriate use, are all the kind of the things that drive the need for this relief in whatever manner.
What's happening with the building now?
I think it's empty now. I think the counseling has ceased. The counseling service merged with the bigger service, and
So the building's vacant?
the building, I believe, is
Generating
vacant,
zero
yes.
income.
Yes.
What was the change in zoning from 86 to now?
I don't know. That's a good question, and I will.
Because the church has owned the property that whole
Since
time.
18-something.
So, just curious, like, why was it that lawful back then, but it's not now? Was there a
Because
zone?
Ed Kowalski was the building inspector. I don't,
That may be the answer.
Yes. They were, just as an aside, and Mr. Kowalski was a wonderful human being, very generous. If you built a pool without a permit, for example, and then came to get a CO for the pool that you illegally built, he gave you a pre-existing non-conforming CO. So that was just the nature of the world in the village in the early to middle 80s.
Very kind and generous.
Yes,
Brad, do
indeed.
you have any sense of if there was a change? Or
No, I
Any
don't
clue?
believe there was a change, no.
Yeah, I don't believe there was, but I mean, I'm certainly happy to investigate that. The third factor is no change to the essential character of the neighborhood. There are still, when it was a counseling center, there were people driving, people with appointments, people being treated. That's going to continue. A different part of the human body being treated, but nonetheless still directed at some medical aspect of the human condition, continuing on. The second is unique hardship. I think, as I said, and I tried to point out, this is a church. It's in a residential zone. It's the end of the business zone. I think it's a unique, there's a building that legally exists that's in search of a use that was built for a use that was not directly religious in nature. So I think the hardship that is being experienced here is in fact unique. And the first and the big factor is reasonable return on the permitted use in the village. So I put together this, and I'm going to go over this quickly, and I'm sure you're going to need time to study it and think about it and generate. Give me one more of those, if you would, please. Questions. So, with the help of the contractor team that's working on this project, I looked at this project from a couple of different directions to see what economic benefit there was, if any, to building houses on this site or on part of this site. So I looked at it in a couple different ways. I looked at it, it's R20, so we could have 20,000 square foot lots. So I looked at it from the perspective of tearing everything down on the property and taking a look at what 8 residential lots would look like. I thought, well, maybe acre lots would be more valuable than half-acre lots in this area, so I took a look at that as well, and came to the conclusion on the, which is shown on this, the third and fourth columns on the second page, to be very unprofitable for 8 lots, somewhat more profitable for 4 lots. However, that presupposes the elimination of the church. And I don't think that that's anything that the church is interested in doing at all. That, the church serves this community, has served this community for, I guess, well over 100 years, and wants to continue doing that. So what I did was I took a look at doing 4 half-acre lots on part of the property and keeping the church on the other part of the property, and did some analysis on that, looking at all of the costs associated with that and the profit that might be expected from that. And I also looked at doing 2 one-acre lots and keeping the church, and that's the 2 colored columns. And if you look at the bottom line there, both of those concepts were money losers, actually. And what, beyond the fact that they might not realize an appropriate return from those changes, they would also lose, as part of that plan, the ability to use this legally constituted building that they already have in the manner in which they're proposing. And the money that is generated by the lease between the applicant here and the church goes directly to the bottom line of the income for the church. And it's my understanding from a discussion with the pastor that the income that will be generated by this use will provide almost 25% of the operating revenue that the church has. Pretty significant, very helpful to allow the church to continue its mission. And
We don't have those numbers, though, do we?
well, I have them orally, and I can get more.
How'd you come up with these numbers? Like, where did they come from?
Well, some of it came from, well, my basis here for value has to do with the assessed value as expressed on the GIS. And I use that on both sides. I use that on the acquisition cost side for taking the assessed value of the existing property as improved. And I looked at the properties in the neighborhood. Most of them are half-acre, and they all retailed, their assessed value were on the order of $1 million. The one larger lot there, I will be right up front with you and indicate it was assessed at about $5 or $6 million, but that seemed a bit of an anomaly to me. So that's why I arrived at the value of $2.5 million. The other, all of my assumptions are indicated at the bottom. Some of it was internet research. Some of it was in consultation with the contractor who was ultimately going to build out the property, but the facility. And the one thing I forgot to include here, which makes it even more negative, is this wonderful park fee that we have in the village here. And since this would be a subdivision of some kind, there would be a park fee due, I would presume, as part of that. So that would increase the loss or reduce the gain from any of these scenarios. And I think, and I touched on this in my written submission as well, but you know, there is, as I'm sure the board is, and council are aware, there's this federal religious land use law, which prevents municipalities, boards, et cetera, from introducing any substantial hardship on a religious institution. This particular use is not, it's in and of itself religious in nature, but it is
Right.
certainly part of a religious community, and it stands in support of the work that this church does in this community and for its parishioners. So, in my mind,
I'm not following how you made
the
that
federal
connection.
law, well, there's a federal law that says that you can't, you know, if you distill it down, I think what it says, or I would characterize it as saying, is that you gotta give a religious institution the benefit of the doubt when they're asking for something. So I think it lowers the bar, frankly, so that's really in a nutshell what the message I wanted to deliver tonight.
Do you have a couple of comments, a couple
Sure.
of questions? I assume that the Beinecke family or foundation, that there's no paperwork involved there that.
No.
Okay.
No, the Beineckes provided the funding for the construction of the building to begin with.
Right.
But I don't think that they exercised any control over the building or its use subsequent to that.
Now, how did this use come about? I would have thought that the church would have sought out another counseling type service to fill that space.
I don't know, but I'll ask them. I don't know what the process was by which they arrived with this particular tenant. I mean, they had a building that produced large amounts of income for them from year to year, and it was empty, so
Right.
they needed somebody, and I guess they made the best deal that they could at the time.
I guess the last thing, before I could make a decision, personally on it, the intensity of the use is a lot greater in my mind with the limited amount that I heard compared to counseling. When you talk about treatment, and imaging, and you have certainly have staff to do that, plus clerical and administrative, as such. It seems like a quite intense use.
I mean, the building's not getting any bigger. Only a certain number of, the building can be only occupied by, a building of a certain size can only be occupied by a certain number of people.
Well, that doesn't.
But I mean, I'm sure that we can look at use projections and we can, to the best we can, because the business that was there before is no longer, see if we can compare and contrast as to whether there actually is an increased intensity. But to the extent that it changes at all, it's still within the parameters of the parking, right now, the parking requirement for that site. And the village itself, the village code itself does not view the change from the counseling use to this type of use as an increase of intensity in terms of parking, because it has exactly the same parking requirement.
Well, that's not so much our concern with the parking.
Well, but I mean, to the extent that parking is related to how many people are coming and going,
Well, that's not
to the intensity of the use.
Well, that's not the intensity I'm really talking about. I'm talking about the intensity of the use itself, counseling compared to medical, purely medical, imagery and
Right.
treatment,
Mhm.
which I don't know really what that really is.
All right, well, we can get some more information
Yeah.
about that, but I mean, a counselor has a patient, one of the doctors or medical professionals that would be working here would have a patient.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
the more information, the better.
Okay, we'll
I'd probably look at it under the character of the neighborhood factor, because that's where it seems to fit. Joe's question seems to,
Mhm.
it's appropriate to say, will it intensify the non-conforming use in that sense, since you're making that argument, so.
Okay, no, I'm happy to
Probably
look at
a
that.
good way to look at it.
Yeah, I'm sure we can satisfy
Mhm.
you in that regard.
I don't have anything else right now, a lot of stuff happening here.
Yeah, well, I threw a lot of stuff at you. This is
Yes,
kind
you
of
did.
a interesting, unique, wonderful,
Well, we handle
Uh,
use variances all the time, Jim, you know
well,
that.
there's been one,
There's been one.
and I'm working on
Yes.
number 2. So,
Mhm.
so
Now,
anyway,
is
that's,
this running concurrently with planning?
we're before planning next week, I believe.
It
Yes.
might be helpful for you to sort of get some read from planning too, because that may help Joe's question in terms of sort of assessing the site impacts, to see what the planning board does.
Mhm.
I don't know, might be something worth looking at.
Yeah, well, I'll certainly discuss that with them, and we'll certainly develop some more information
Yeah.
in that vein as well.
This site that was picked, is that just was in conjunction with the church reaching out, or?
I'll
I
find
mean,
out.
there's other,
I will find out.
there's no other better location in the village area?
Well, this is a pretty good location, I think, right on the end of our main street.
Mhm.
It's certainly, if this were the B1, I think this would be a permitted use.
Are there any other uses similar to this with medical treatment on Main Street?
On Main Street, I don't believe so. But I don't believe the village code precludes that.
Right.
So there could be. In partial answer to some of the questions, this seemed to be a nice sized building in a nice location, already developed. No exterior infrastructure to have to be further developed. So I suspect that that's why it was attractive to the New York cancer folks. But I'll see what I can find out about how this marriage happened.
Seafield is on Main Street.
That's true. That's true. Different form of medical, but yeah.
Is that B1?
Yeah, I believe it is.
I think it is.
Yeah, because I think that, is that,
I think,
maybe not? But I think that's a pre-existing non-conforming use. So. It was a nursing home
They
a long time
expanded
ago.
on that.
Yeah. I don't remember what
They
kind
took
of
over
really.
the corner piece.
Yeah, for offices though, I think
Yeah.
that was, so that was, well, we can investigate that as well.
okay.
Um,
Mr. McMullen, you seem like you wanted to say something at some point. Am I correct in that?
I'm not sure if it answers your question, but you had mentioned about the clerical and the administrative. One of the benefits of sort of the breadth and scope of our practice is that we don't need, like, that, those services get centralized elsewhere. So your billing, your accounting, your scheduling, all of those things are not going to be using up that space there.
Okay.
They're centralized elsewhere.
Now, when you do your, I mean, you said you have a number of places, on Long Island, and is this in the northeast or Long Island, or how, what's the size?
Long Island, the 5 boroughs, and we're just starting to move a little bit upstate, so into like Newburgh.
So when you did your research, you found that Westhampton Beach was a place, there was a need for.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think also answers the question, we found that there was a lack of these services in this area.
Okay.
So yes, it is an attractive spot, but it also helps in providing those services for this community.
Okay.
And
The surrounding area as well.
And the surrounding area, exactly.
All right.
Anybody else? No?
All right, thank you.
So I guess we'll, see you next month.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
you will. We'll have some more
Thank you,
information
Jim.
for you. Thank
Okay,
you.
So I'll make a
Thank you for your
motion.
attention.
You guys all set? Well, I'll make a motion. We go ahead and hold this over for all purposes.
Second.
Second by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Good. All right. All right, guys. So that concludes our meeting for tonight. And I'll make a motion. We go ahead and close our meeting.
Second.
Second by Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
We're out. Okay. Wow.
I just have a question, it's nothing to do with my, do you have a camera when you come in downstairs by the, when you walk in, like by the building?
Camera? I don't know. Megan, do we have a camera?
I don't think the lobby
My husband and I left with our attorney and we were down in the hallway and Mr. Canty.
You can just go to the police department tomorrow.
No, I am, but I want to know, this is the second time he's threatened us. He was really out of.
But they'll know, the police department will know if there's any cameras.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
if there's any cameras at PD will know.
they'll know.
We don't really know.
Wow.